Okay, that is recording. I need to let you know you're being recorded.
Thank you. Thanks.
Right, okay. So, welcome to the very first episode of PausCast, your midday mind and body reboot, where we dive into the world of physical and mental health solutions and cut through the clutter to bring you what truly works for your mental and physical health. What is effective? Why? What to look for when choosing a solution for yourself or your team? And what are some short 5-minute tools and practices that you can use throughout your day to keep you happy, healthy, and performing at your best under any circumstance? So without further ado, I would like to introduce in our premiere episode, we're thrilled and privileged to feature the brilliant and inspiring Dr. Joseph Firth, a leading academic researcher in the intersection of physical and mental health, and UKRI Future Leaders Fellow at the University of Manchester. This is a long one, Joe, so try to bear with me. You've done a lot of stuff. He has a notable academic background, having completed his PhD in medicine at the University of Manchester, and has earned a first-class honours Bachelor of Science in Psychology from the University of Sheffield. He's an honorary fellow at the Western Sydney University and an honorary fellow at Greater Manchester Mental Health NHS Foundation Trust. Please, if some of my research is wrong, please correct me. His research extensively explores the relationship between mental illness and quality of life aspects, and is known for investigating how physical wellness affects mental disorder, risk, and treatment outcomes. Joe has made significant contributions to the field through his research on the use of digital technologies interventions for mental illness treatment improvement. Most recently, he contributed to and published a brilliant paper, Current Evidence on the Efficacy of Mental Health Smartphone Apps for Symptoms of Depression and Anxiety, a meta-analysis of 176 randomized controlled trials, which we will touch on in a bit later. He has over 250 peer-reviewed articles in top journals like the BMG, American Journal of Psychiatry, and the Lancet Psychiatry. His notable publications include a meta-review on lifestyle psychiatry, examining the role of exercise, smoking, diet, and sleep in the prevention and treatment of mental disorders, and research on digital mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic. And his most cited work includes a meta-analysis on physical activity and incident depression. Correct?
Yes, probably, yes.
His research has gained significant media coverage and has been covered by over 700 news outlets, and has participated in televised interviews on BBC and Sky News. In addition to his academic endeavours, Joe has received multiple awards and recognitions, and has been awarded Clarivet World Highly Cited Researcher in Psychology and Psychiatry 2020 to 2022. The USERN Laureate for Social Sciences in 2022, Research.com's #1 rising star in science in the UK, and he's also recognised as a world expert in exercise and mental health by Expertscape. Joe's work also aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, particularly contributing to goals related to zero hunger, good health and well-being, and peace, justice, and strong institutions, which underscores his commitment to addressing global health and wellness challenges through his research. Joe's research has influenced health policy, contributing to national policy documents and guidelines. He's been involved in developing the WHO's Global Physical Activity Guidelines and other significant policy documents. He has been and is an advisor to a number of companies building digital solutions for mental and physical health. He's an international keynote speaker, and most importantly, Joe is a father. So, well, I think I've got everything there. Did I miss anything?
I think that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me, Henry. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad I put my effort into it. I had a bit of help from Google, but I hope you remember all those amazing achievements. I guess the first question is...
At least you do, so that's nice enough. That's good enough.
I'll send you a copy of that. How do you do it all? How do you achieve all that and keep yourself happy, healthy, and on top of all these endeavors? How do you cope?
Well, that's a good question, really. Quite a few people ask me questions like that. And to be honest, it doesn't really feel very difficult, because I enjoy so much and I'm so motivated by most of what I do. And also, I'm very lucky in terms of like the team. Everything that you've described, really, it's got my name attached to it or whatever. But most of those things are a big team effort, and other people put in more work than me on a lot of those things as well. So But we've all got the same vision. And my team is not based where I work at Manchester so much. There's some people there, but it's a very international group of people who are all very passionate about trying to bring more evidence-based lifestyle interventions into mental health care. So I think that shared mission is really what's took us all to generate so much success from our research projects. And no one's really ever been focused on that much on individual success within that or individualistic achievements. It's been more about us trying to get these initiatives going, and there's lots of people who've been a part of that. So it's all been quite an enjoyable and motivating process. It's never felt too difficult in any respect. Obviously, there's a daily difficulties with like admin stuff, but the actual overall mission that everybody's on feels very collaborative and enjoyable.
Amazing. So you could sum it up as a great team, a great supported team, but also, an alignment in a joined, inspiring mission that you're all sort of very passionate about.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Well, I hope everyone else can be as lucky and as you in crafting that kind of environment for their work. Okay, I wanted to start with this. Having said that, what's something you do that's sort of really quick and easy, something you do on a regular basis to sort of set yourself up for, I know, one of these a work block or a keynote or a conversation like this, or perhaps something you use to sort of decompress after one of these events or something? What's something you do that's quick and easy that helps you sort of cope?
Yeah, well, most of the time you're just bouncing between tasks, and that's fine. The thing that I struggle with most is like sustained, sitting down for a long time, sustained sedentary behavior, working on academic endeavors or research things or whatever it might be. So I try to break that, and I feel like my energy levels dip. The more sedentary I am, the lower my energy actually goes, and you're just kind of approaching that sleep thing. So that's the main thing for me, rather than doing a special type of preparation before something quite exciting or something big. That doesn't feel as necessary as using things like regular physical activity to break up that sedentariness and get a little bit of energy out of your day. So I've got a lot.
Get the blood flowing again. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a full workout. I used to, when I was like a student or whatever, I'd be at the gym all the time. I loved it, but now obviously I've got the job, I've got the kid and everything like that, so you're not there quite as often. I do try to break my day up in different ways with physical activity. So you can actually see actually, on the door there, we've got the
we can't quite see. If you move your camera to the left, there we go. Look, we've got a band, resistant band.
So I can use this, and I'll shut the door like this. And then
do you want to run us through something that you might do?
Well, I'm not a personal trainer, so I don't want to be giving people advice or anything like that.
So this is not professional.
I've got a bad shoulder. I've dislocated my shoulder a few times, so I do some like rehabilitation stuff with the band. Again, I'm not a physiotherapist, and it's like little exercises like that to break the day up. And I'll do, I'll do some bicep stuff, some tricep stuff, and maybe some press ups. I've also, if I'm feeling a little bit more lively, I've got this thing, this like a chin up bar.
Chin-up bar, yeah.
Yeah, this basically clips onto the door, and then you do chin-ups. But I have to be on the other side of the door, so I won't demonstrate them now. You'll just have to believe that I can do chin-ups.
We'll perhaps do a competition, see how many you can do on another occasion. And so this generally would be, a couple of minutes. What is this? What are you sort of aiming for here? Is it a couple of minutes? Is it sort of a full arm workout? Or is it just...
Yeah, it's never trying to be like a workout. You know what I mean? I'm never trying to like improve my athletic performance by doing this, other than I guess the aspect of like shoulder rehabilitation, which would help with that. But it's more about, I just do as much as what I enjoy, or if I'm leaving the room or going to get a cup of tea or another coffee. Say if I'm going for like 18th coffee of the day, I'll think, do I need a coffee, or would I feel more energized from doing a little bit of this? I'll just choose whichever. And that's also like, it kind of comes down to what you're saying about like, how do you do it all at the beginning? I just choose things that I actually want to do and what I'll enjoy, you know what I mean? So I never try and push myself too much when I'm just exercising at home or do anything like to requires, like almost like you're punishing yourself. I just do like, oh, that'll be nice. I'll do a little bit of this. And even if I only do 2 minutes, then that's fine. Or sometimes you'll end up doing 20 minutes. She'll get into it and maybe you've got some music on or something like that. So
so it's stacked onto other habits, like getting up and going for a coffee or going to the bathroom or getting some water or going seeing a colleague. You're like, oh, I'll add this on. So it's kind of
Exactly. That's why I even leave the thing
And
on the
it's
door.
there,
It
yeah.
kind of reminds you, yeah, you put your hand on it and it's a little bit inconvenient and it reminds you to do something. Yeah.
And that's sort of classic examples from that book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it talks about, make it easy, stack it on other habits you already do, create the environment. If you're going to go running in the morning, make sure you got your running kit and your shoes sort of and your water just there. So it's the first thing you see. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
I'd agree with that entirely as a principle. It sounds really good.
yeah, it's a brilliant. He says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So if your system is, all your gear is tucked away neatly in in wherever it is in cupboards, and you don't see it, and you're always in a rush and you're walking out, and you forget to do these things. But if it's there right in your face, then for me personally, I got rid of all chairs, so I just have a standing desk. I don't have any chairs or seats in the house. My girlfriend finds that a bit annoying. um, I've I haven't even got. I'm in the process of making a sort of Japanese table, cutting the legs off so we can sit on the floor. But just something like that. Just if there's a chair there, I'm going to sit on it. I'm gonna want to be there, and so building in that kind of environmental factor is really really useful. Okay, so what initially drew you to the intersection of physical and mental health in your research? And was there any defining moment or personal experience that shaped this journey for you?
Well, I think I was into that before I was into research, really, because after I finished my first degree in psychology at Sheffield, I was working in just like various like mental health support roles, basically like low-level mental health support with different populations, mostly young people, and I'd see they were getting various types of mental health support, which works to different extents for different people. Some people would get psychological therapies or support workers, and some people would get medications as well as that. So, and you kind of see what was missing as well. And at the time, I was really into fitness then. It was a big part of my life, and I was competing in sports and stuff. So, and we'd used to get some stuff going just as part, just to really pass the time through the like 12-hour shift work and stuff, get some fitness stuff going or whatever it might be. Or just even the conversations you have with people, you realize how much those physical health aspects were missing from mental health care and the mental health populations who were all quite receptive to those ideas, especially in young people, and everybody kind of accepts that a healthy body is a healthy mind. Even the doctors, the psychiatrists are all behind that message, but then how much is it actually included into mental health care? Basically zero, unless somebody's taking their own initiative and are a little bit of a champion of those ideas and set things up themselves. It's 100%. Not really, yeah. So that to me just said, and then I started my PhD at Manchester with my supervisor, Professor Alison Young, back ages ago now. And she was really into exercise as well. And she wanted to do something around exercise for young people with first episode psychosis, which is like young people in the early stages of very severe mental health problems, such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. And that's been my, a big focus of most of my career. But then you see where it can be so helpful there, and you see where it can be helpful in other areas as well. And the more you dive into it, you see that the physical fitness and exercise stuff, it's good for it. It's good for all types of mental health. It doesn't really matter if it's just somebody with quite, like common low-level depression, low mood and things like that, and maybe they're not even on any medications or anything, or even a greater intensity of mental health problems, something like schizophrenia, taking medications, even alongside that, exercise can be very useful. Now, you've kind of paused, Henry, and I'm wondering if something's gone wrong.
We're back again. We can hear you now. We had a short interruption. I'm in the Highlands here, so sometimes the connection is not so good.
Okay, no problem. I just thought I'd stop talking before I was going on too long.
No, you're never going too long. And so your experience, did you find many of your colleagues were receptive to that? You said your mentor helped encourage that. But so I have a number of friends who are medical professionals up here, and they work, as you may know, like hundreds of hours. They're working non-stop, and they sort of have very little time in between, and it's very sort of it seems there's very little breaks. And although they know these kind of things, they know they should be eating healthy, exercising, but quite often at the cafeteria it's just sweets and donuts and more coffee, and then there's very little. They're so exhausted. There's very little opportunity to do these kind of movements and exercises in between. And by the sound of it, what you were saying, that you also participated in these activities as well as is running them. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. And it is a culture thing. And you've probably observed that from general medicine. And I'd say in mental health care, the services are even more under-resourced and even more overstretched at the moment. And the staff, in a position where they can be so busy, it can be difficult for them to take care of their own lifestyles and physical health.
Yeah.
So to add on that, the responsibility to take care of service users' exercise regimes or something is just completely unfeasible. So it's not that any clinicians that I've met are against these ideas. It's just not supported. So we're more about advocating for, let's bring these things in to mental health care. Let's make it part of recovery. Let's have fitness professionals, dietitians as part of these services that can actually
100%
put the work. Yeah.
And do you think it's important that the professionals giving this advice and giving these treatments and helping people should take part in these activities as well, as opposed to solely giving it out? Because there's the whole sort of adage about put your own mask on before you put your mask on. If anyone's seen a safety or paid attention to a safety notice on an aeroplane recently, or ever, that's what they say. Do you feel that that's important? That's a sort of a way to go, or?
Well, I think it's great if it's coming from the healthcare service, indeed, yeah, rather than just being something that a healthcare professional just recommends to them. If they can at least refer them to something that's been provided through the service, so it's actually a real part of care, that sends a much stronger message to a service user or a patient that this is something we're taking seriously, even if each individual. But certainly I agree that every individual who's providing mental health care should also have access to the same level of interventions and things like that as the service users, ideally. And the healthier you can make the cultures. They've been really successful at this in Australia with the Keeping the Body Mind group, who were really forerunners of a lot of these ideas of building it in as an integral part of mental health care, setting up gyms, community health centres and stuff. And that since then they've really broadened it out to be training the staff and providing them with interventions and upskilling them in various different types of physical activity and nutrition knowledge. And that's had a knock-on effect not only on the staff's health and productivity, but also on the types of care they feel confident providing to people with mental illness. So the transformative effect can start from at the provider level or at the patient level as well.
So it probably can seem like a lot in terms of, a sort of high barrier to entry almost for, to get all these initiatives for the providers to start using these tools, whether it's the diet, the sleep, the physical fitness, the mental health tools, because they're potentially so overwhelmed, they're so stressed. How can I fit anything more in? How can I, and as we were talking about them beforehand, it can be simple as 30 seconds, on the resistance bands, or 5 pull-ups, or I could probably only do about 3. I'm sure you can do a bit more. What is it? And is people's perception that it's such a big barrier to entry, that it's just, we've got to do all this and it's really complicated, as opposed to actually can it be broken down into very sort of small, simple, quick steps?
Yeah, 100% it can. And as you mentioned in your very kind introduction, I was recently part of the World Health Organization's update to their physical activity guidelines, and the main motto from that is every move matters. So they're giving the guidelines, and we give the the maximum amounts and the amounts that people should aspire to in optimal conditions. 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous a week, or 90 minutes of vigorous, things like this, and that can be motivating for some people or be demoralizing for others who feel like they're really not there yet. So the main front page of that, really what we've come out with, is every move matters, and this is a real testament to the ideas behind these approaches, which is doing anything is better than nothing, and also the actual evidence. That's what the evidence shows. The most sedentary people are the ones who are most likely to benefit from even a slight increase in physical activity. So the more sedentary you are, a lot of people feel like exercise is too far away because they've been so sedentary for so long. But it's the opposite. The benefits of exercise are much more in reach. Me doubling my physical activity now is not going to really confer that much more advantage in terms of mental health, because you plateau pretty quickly. Whereas somebody who's been very sedentary, even though you can feel more disengaged, you actually stand to benefit loads from even small amounts. So that's what it's all about in mental health care and in just the general population, really, in occupational contexts or schools. Just helping people who are sedentary become more active is where you see the biggest health benefits of physical activity.
That's really interesting. I like in some countries in Asia, and particularly Japan, where they do these sort of exercise routines at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how you know, prevalent it is and how many people are doing it, but you see the sort of the videos of people doing these kind of exercises and movements as a sort of group before, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's a good approach. When it becomes more part of society, then it's more likely to get that uptake, isn't it?
Definitely. I think if you have one or two people doing it, you know, within particularly an open plan office, you know, you could get people sort of going, oh, what's going on here? Who are they? You know, what? And it can have that, either could have an inspiring effect or could have a sort of demotivating effect. I guess it depends on how that's interpreted. But if it's part of the culture, as you say, which seems to be a key sort of aspect, if it's part of the culture, and certainly people within the leadership are sort of championing this and actually practicing these practices and encouraging them, then it's sort of seen as, okay, this is something that's acceptable, this is something we can take time out of our day to do, and actually we don't need to take that much time out of our day because we can incorporate into whatever, you know, we have to go to the bathroom, we have to drink water, some people have to drink coffee, you know, we have to eat, whether you're a faster and you eat at 12 o'clock, 5 o'clock or whatever it is, you know, we have to eat at some point, we have to do some of these activities, so to stack them on and to sort of incorporate that too. Okay.
Yeah.
Throughout your career, how has your personal experiences and observations influenced your research?
Well, I'd say the main one for that for me was probably, it's an interesting question actually. I'm not sure I've discussed this before, but the main one of that for me was my initial interest in research was about using physical activity entirely to promote mental health in people treated for mental health conditions or not. Now, when you started doing that, I'd also see the massive detriment of mental illness and it's sometimes even mental medications, what they could do to people's physical health. So there'd be young people being treated in our interventions who talk to me, say for instance, and they'd be saying, oh, okay, yeah, so I had my psychotic episode and I was treated with these medications and things like this, and it's helped, but I'm still not 100% better. So my mental health is still poor. And in the meantime, I've gained so much weight. You know, I've gone from 10 stone to 14 stone or 15 stone or whatever it might be for their body type. And the extent that had impact on their, you know, just self-esteem and things that aren't really measured clinically in terms of outcomes. And you just see, and then also on things like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases over time, I became more aware of those issues as well. And it's not all entirely due to the medications, because somebody with well-managed mental health problems, be it through medications or whatever strategy, will have better physical health than somebody who's obviously left with an untreated mental illness. So it's not to blame that, but it's to take into account that these systems that are in place for treating mental illness are not taking care of people's physical health in a way that has a big detrimental effect secondary to even the lifestyle aspects. So then I became a lot more involved in that aspect as well, and just seeing like the kind of unfairness of the physical health outcomes for people treated with mental illness and people with more severe mental health conditions like bipolar disorders and schizophrenia. They die a lot younger than the general population all over the world due to physical health concerns. And it's got to the point really now where the most life-threatening aspect of a severe mental health condition is the physical health outcomes. That's what people
really
more so even than the suicide, which still does tragically affect far too many people, not to downplay that. But the thing that's really going under the radar and is not being addressed by society or mental health care is these physical health problems. So trying to get behind that more than just even let's use lifestyle to improve our mental health has been a big part of my research after becoming involved in these areas.
Interesting. So it really impacted you seeing these patients and these people you were working alongside. Did it ever affect you negatively? Did you ever experience any depressive episodes or anxious episodes because of working in this environment?
No, because I've always worked in quite a research role. I've never really had like a clinical responsibilities like that. So I can see that's not to downplay how it affects other people, but
Yeah.
like the level of patient engagement that I have compared to somebody who's full time in an inpatient ward or something is very negligible. But that is why like my interest has always been in young adults' mental health.
Mm.
And before I got into young adult mental health, I did some like work and work placements in like children with either mental health problems or from social conditions that led to those type of concerns. And I could tell straight away that really, not to sound heartless about young adults, but I can kind of cope with that. But then dealing with the child side of things, I quickly decided, even though it's very motivating, it's not going to be, it's not going to be conducive to. I know there's some people who are a lot more resilient or a lot more able to deal with the type of things, and that I stayed away from that area for that reason as well, because I could imagine how much of a demand it can take on mental health care providers in that domain.
Yeah, it goes back to sort of them being able to use all the tools that we talked about consistently to be able to cope with that. Even I mean, I'm not even sure if even if you use everything there, still with that kind of environment, it's still probably very trying and testing on people. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So, in your perspective, what are the most exciting developments in digital mental health right now, and how do you envision these will transform mental health care in the next decade or so?
Oh, that's a really great question. So yeah, digital mental health right now is a little bit of a wild west, and I'd steal that phrase from a colleague of mine, John Torres, who's been one of my longest collaborators, and kind of, even though he's the same age as me, kind of like a mentor in the digital health aspects of this field. Who's a real expert from Harvard, and there's so much going off in digital mental health at the minute, but a lot of it is just ran by kind of independent companies who are more tech-based than psychiatric, and more bothered about gaining, capital, getting investment, getting people buying their app than the actual quality of what's provided. So there's a big marketing push from lots of companies. Now within that, there's also some really evidence-based apps that are emerging, like Sleepio in the UK. There's a few other good examples of ones that have been trialed out. I just thought of Sleepio because it got added to the NHS guidelines as a treatment for insomnia rather than medications even. So there's some really great work going off, but that's easy. The amount of time it takes to generate proper evidence behind something, or even any level of evidence, is just so time consuming and financially demanding compared to just marketing pushes, that the digital mental health space at the minute is oversaturated with non-evidence based, like quick hit stuff, whereas the longer term established interventions that are really trying to make a difference can get pushed under the carpet, unfortunately. So it's a bit of a tricky space with digital mental health. Now, at the same time as that, I also see a great opportunity in digital physical health. Like physical health and fitness promotion through digital tech is probably like one of the best things that's came from digital tech in terms of improving population health. Like we're all a lot more sedentary, we're all on our iPhones and stuff like that, but it has opened up a whole new world of opportunities for people to engage in online fitness classes, take on different apps, whatever you're into. If you want to track your step counts and try to get a little bit fitter that way, or your heart rate variability, it's just opened up a whole world of fitness opportunities outside the usual sports groups and gyms. That's a really, it's a beneficial thing, that it's there's so much investment and it's so advanced in that space. So with regard to your final question there about what are the biggest opportunities, I'd say, and this is what my research is focused on at the minute, bridging that gap. So using all those new opportunities that have emerging from digital physical health and fitness to bring them in to fill that gap that we spoke about already around physical health and mental health care, so that we now, even in the most unresourced settings, we've now got good quality, fit, personalized, widely accessible fitness stuff that can be used by and well recommended by mental health care services, or just any type of provider for preserving fitness.
And how do you imagine that, looking 10 years in the future, how do you imagine that, providing, things go fairly smoothly? How do you imagine that sort of processing? What does that look like, 10 years down the line?
It's really hard to say, isn't it? Because you just see so much advancement with, like recently there's even been the Apple Vision Pro that's came out, and it could change the face of what was previously called XR and now is called, I don't know, something computing or something. I forgot the term for it. But yeah, there's like so hard to predict a 10-year gap. But a general theme I'd see is more targeted efforts to use digital physical health stuff to improve mental health. Right now, there's either one or the other. They either have your therapy apps, your digital tracking apps for your mental health and stuff like that, and that's for your mental health, or you have your fitness apps, which is for tracking your gym sessions or your step count or joining some online workout for your physical health or weight loss or whatever people want. I'd see more over the 10-year progression, whatever direction it goes technologically, the philosophy of combining the two becoming a more central part.
So having one platform, one app that's also tailored to individual needs and individual treatment programs that can be almost not monitored, but customized by practitioners and have that kind of involvement. But at the same time, it's one place that can give people all that.
Or even a few places that people can choose from, but just that like idea of using the digital physical stuff to improve mental health as well.
And for them being able to track that and see that improvement as well, presumably.
Yeah. People really. We've recently just completed a study looking at the preference towards. We've not published these data yet, but the preferences towards different types of digital tech among young people living with mental health conditions, all types of mental health conditions. And it really.
Can you give us a sneak preview into any insights there?
Yeah, people really like the idea of what you just said. Tracking how their physical health behaviors relate to their mental health on a day-to-day basis, so looking at how active they are, how well they're sleeping, what they're eating is impacting on their mood and how they're feeling, their anxiety levels and things like that. That's a very popular use of these technologies from our perspective gathering exercise. That's been one surprising finding. Another thing is people are very receptive to like home workout style stuff as well, like instructional stuff. People are already using social media massively, especially YouTube, for actually just seeking out home fitness stuff, and it's already happening. So it's coming to the point where we need to take advantage of this, you know what I mean, and make sure there's a lot of good stuff on there. There's loads of good stuff out there, but there's also some influencer garbage, or stuff that could even be considered harmful in some cases. So it's really, if people if young patients are accessing these online systems anyway, let's make sure that there's quality content in place for people looking to improve their own health in that self-management.
So if you're a patient or if you're undergoing mental health treatment, then ask your practitioner or whoever you're working with to perhaps reference or recommend various apps as opposed to
but that's a minute, because like we say, it's not really integrated. The practitioners aren't really up to date on it and stuff like that, so it's hard even in that's the ideal thing. So it's at a phase now where we need to start having authoritative advice on how to go about seeking health information online, especially through those sources. But I guess you could start at like I'd say rather than your practitioner, like the NHS website or something like that would be a good starting point, or NHS channels on YouTube and things like that. Trying to get your information from authoritative sources is a better idea than you could ask your clinician, but don't be surprised if they don't know.
And do you think there's a difference between public and private practitioners in their sort of ability to advise and their knowledge around these kind of tools? Or do you think, given that maybe a private practitioner may be better rewarded, have more time and space and ability to sort of focus on these kind of things, as opposed to a public practitioner who's probably fairly overwhelmed and underpaid and underloved and all these things that are in that way?
There is massive differences in terms of physical health care provision for mental health patients between practitioners, but I wouldn't say it differs between sectors so much as it all comes down to the individual really and their own attitude towards integrating these approaches. And you see some really heroic efforts to build these things in. They're not getting paid any extra for it, and it's taking up all the time in setting up sports groups in mental health care clubs, bringing in gym stuff. There is some really good efforts from all different sectors, and it's a shame that it has to rely on just like people's goodwill basically at the minute to become part of mental health treatment, rather than being just a standard part that's well funded and resourced. But some places get it a lot better than others, largely due to the individuals, and a lot of the big success initiatives, even the globally known ones like the KBIM program that I mentioned earlier, really started with just a small handful of people, a psychiatrist and an exercise physiologist and some researchers who were just keen to get it going and just did it off their own back really. So it's amazing what can happen even in those most disadvantaged healthcare environments. But you need to the providers on board, definitely.
So it's really down to those individual providers in the various areas who are trying to implement different things, and they're sort of leading these initiatives. And so perhaps, looking forward, talking about bridging that 10-year gap and what it will look like, the integration between these providers and companies trying to build these solutions in a way that's not, oh, you promote our app and we'll pay you, which is potentially a conflict of interest, as opposed to sort of, okay, this is a really valuable app, this is a really valuable tool, let us work alongside you, but also being able to give some of those rewards back to and support and help bolster, help boost some of these well-deserving overworked people.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how like the payer provider model ends up working out in the real world. I don't think that it'll end up being the NHS building. They've had a go at building some of their own apps, but it feels quite far behind. I guess they'll be just underinvested really, and they're quickly out of date compared to the more modern stuff, especially for physical health. That's hard to imagine that being the model. It probably will be more about collaborations with external companies who are producing the evidence in collaboration with NHS services, and then keeping it running basically as a tech company, like a pharma company provides a medication to the NHS. I forgot who gave me this example before. I think it was Colin Espy from Sleepio who talked about the pharma company provides NHS with meds. Tech companies can provide NHS with evidence-based tech.
Okay, interesting. So that similar model, not mentioning all the potential pitfalls and issues already with that existing that seem to appear in the newspapers and things like that all the time. But okay, yeah, interesting. And so this leads us on nicely to, you've recently been part of a paper, Current Evidence on the Efficacy of Mental Health Smartphone Apps for Symptoms of Depression and Anxiety. And this was a meta-analysis of 176 randomized controlled trials. So with the current surge in digital mental health tools, what are the key factors in determining the effectiveness and reliability that you found during the study of these tools?
Well, I'll speak about that question in relation to that study and other types of research as well that we've been conducting, because we've done a few things on that, if that's okay.
100%.
Yeah, and I think really what's really interesting when we've done the scoping, there's lots of studies out there and randomized controlled trials and high quality research on specific apps for specific mental health conditions. And then alongside that, you can go to the App Store, and it's so hard to find those actual apps that are the evidence-based ones and the ones that have been trialed, whereas there's all these other ones sat on there that have got no evidence behind them. And there seems like a massive disconnect, almost like they fall into two categories: either the ones that are happening academically and scientifically but aren't really available on the App Store, and then on the other hand, you have loads available on the App Store that are not academically or scientifically tested or based really even in evidence-based healthcare. So there's a big disconnect at the minute between those two things. So while there is in existence these evidence-based apps, the provision of them is either swamped out or just completely offline, so, and don't get that follow-up support. So it's a really tricky field at the minute. But then there is, it's encouraging to see there is so many different initiatives emerging from different types of therapies, and mental health is a very personalized thing. And it's so hard for mental health care services to provide personalized care to every person. The digital world presents an opportunity where that can happen. People want chatbots, but there's big dangers with chatbots at the minute. So I'm not just advocating for chatbots broadly, but there will, there's a potential for these to emerge if people want online therapies, if people just want to track their physical and mental health. It can actually provide that world where the personalized mental health care becomes something from theoretical to something completely possible. And it is happening in certain areas, but we've still got a long way to go before it's commonplace.
So it'd be nice to see some contribution from these app stores like Google Play or the App Store, and for them to sort of, almost bolster and market or help. At least, this is a section for evidence-based apps, as opposed to this is, and it sort of makes me wonder, why aren't these apps being marketed properly? Surely, if they're evidence-based and they're working and there's some function in it, and they have some success, why aren't they being marketed? Why isn't this seen as a business opportunity for some of these groups? as opposed to trying something themselves that may not be effective or may even be dangerous, which is eventually going to have consequences at some point down the line.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question, and I think a lot of it comes down to like the way that science works versus the way marketing works, which is marketing is like the first leader always wins basically, and the people with the most financial backing for marketing, whereas science is more the good science requires lots of investment and lots of time and lots of iteration. You need those scientists continuously involved. You can't just have a tech company get some science done and then all their updates and everything else happens subsequently, are just done free. However, you need those science teams who might have gone on to other projects or whatever, still having input as things are iterated, as science is an iterative process, whereas selling something isn't necessarily. So I think there's just a big disconnect. And there needs to be like either some regulation in place, or there is actually some central libraries that people have built, like John Torres, who I mentioned earlier. I think it's mindapps.org. And if you go to mindapps.org, they've kind of been through the app stores and checked the apps that are there for the ones that have trials behind them, the ones that are, cost money, the ones that provide sleep help versus if you want help with anxiety. So it's like a filter system.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so there is initiatives out there.
Mindapp.com.
Mindapps.org, I think it is.
Mindapps.org.
Yeah, if you go to their library on there, then it's still, it's something that they've just built with very little funding with John and his students and postdocs. So it's kind of like a primitive website in some degrees, but the type of information it can provide is beyond, what the Apple App Store will give you. So yeah,
almost like one of those review, customer review processes, but by professionals, researchers, and people who really know what's there and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and ranking it against standardized criteria as well, rather than just making it up. So there is the American Psychiatric Association, their task force on like evidence-based apps or something like that, and they came up with 21 items to rank each app against. But obviously, like all this is time-consuming work that people have to do off their own bat. So it's you can see why it doesn't capture people's attention like a Netflix ad about a mental health app or something like that. So yeah.
Interesting. So would you just run us through some of the key findings of this paper, and in regards to the efficacy of smartphone apps for treating or being part of the treatment towards for depression and anxiety?
Yeah, sure. Well, the meta-analysis really gives a general idea about the evidence base as it stands. Obviously, you've got to take into account there's lots of different heterogeneity, which means a lot of individual differences between the trials and between the people that are trialed in. But generally, the main findings are that, as we kind of suspected, as we've shown before, as this literature base is developed, smartphone apps can provide some level of symptom reduction, a significant level of symptom reduction in depression and anxiety. So that's not to say it cures it, but there's what we'd consider small effect sizes, statistically significant effect sizes in those symptom domains. And within that, it's quite promising to see there's lots of subgroups, on the different types of apps that appear that lots of different aspects can be effective. And I think what's actually quite interesting is that chatbots look to be particularly effective in the most recent things. Which is an interesting finding, because obviously we've seen big advances in AI and stuff at the minute, and that might be able to help people with mental illness or for either tracking or for personalized support. But then again, there's big dangers with what's available at the moment, so we can't rely on that entirely. But it's just good to see that as the field is really progressing, the data is still in the right direction in terms of positive effects on mental health from something as simple as a smartphone app, and also alongside that, lots of different approaches seem to be conferring benefits in different populations as well. So it's not like there's a definitive answer on the evidence to date, but it's in the right direction from the evidence-based side. Now, that's not to speak to say every app on the marketplace is going to be effective for your mental health. That's a completely different question. But the academic base is growing in the right direction.
That's going to be detrimental to your mental health, trying to use every app on the So it's really trying to find out, and that's a challenge in itself, And that's why, you know, having one of these systems, ranking systems from professionals that can really sort of, okay, you were experiencing this, you've been diagnosed with this, or whatever, you know, as much detail on the person as possible. Okay, these are what might be, you know, try them out. These are what may be functional for you, may be effective for you. And then perhaps the more feedback they're given, then, okay, that's really interesting. I think I've experienced that myself. You know, some of these apps are brilliant and they're really helpful for improving symptoms, but then sometimes it becomes sort of overwhelming, or the integration into your everyday, you know, if you're always on your telephone and, you know, to get on this app, and then you're distracted by, you know, the YouTube logo or something like that, and you end up, you know, 3 hours later down a YouTube rabbit hole.
Yeah, and there's even
As
been
opposed
some
to doing.
evidence to indicate that even well-meaning apps that have been trialed out that are a lot about mood tracking in certain populations, for instance, depressive bipolar disorder, can worsen mood in some individuals who are, you know, experiencing low mood constantly, and then the app being, by providing regular prompts for updates on that, can be kind of forcing potentially some type of rumination or just a reminder of some poor mood in a way that does the opposite of what you'd want it to do. So, and this is by good research, good intentions, so it can easily go wrong as well.
I've always wanted to have, you know, that integration between the app and the wearable tech, that instead of having to input everything, you know, physically on your phone input, it's almost sort of seamless. And so you could track your mood by measuring, and obviously I'm sure there's a lot of work to be done to actually do this, but measuring certain physical responses or energy levels or whatever it is. And so it's almost, you know, it's a sort of done for you, because there can be a lot of work to be put into even some of the simplest apps, to even just, you know, to put into that. And it can feel, when you're already overwhelmed, it can feel like, well, it can feel like it's just another task to do. It's another thing.
Yeah, it's the same with, like, the reason why everybody's happy to track their physical activity or sleep, but nobody really does tracking diet very often, because it's just so much effort to put in all the dietary information. It's not because people are less interested in diet, it's just because there's no easy way of capturing it, whereas physical activity and sleep, it's automated, so it's easy.
Definitely. I'm a member of the Zoe app, and I shamefully haven't done it for the last month since Christmas, and I need to get back on it. But it was a lot of, you know, a lot of effort just inputting stuff, and it doesn't always input right, and you think, oh god, oh, this is bad, oh my god. And, you know, it was it's interesting, but as you said, I think there's a lot of work to there's a way to go. But anyway, okay, so I just want to talk about this. So there's obviously a positive correlation between some smartphone apps and the impact it can have as part of treatment for mental health, particularly depression and anxiety. And also, the more nuanced we can get, then the better, because not all apps work for everyone. What are some of the major drawbacks? We've touched on some of them, talking about the lack of integration in real life, the overwhelm, the bad actors out there. So what other potential drawbacks do you guys find?
Yeah, I think they're most of them, to be honest, in terms of the drawbacks. And that obviously, if you're using an ineffective app, you're also just wasting time and wasting effort, and maybe could stop you from probably the most harmful aspect would be if somebody was relying on a non-evidence-based app to replace what would be genuine mental health care, you know, turn into an app that was ineffective, rather than going to see their doctor, or even just other self-management strategies like exercise, like focus on your lifestyle, like psychotherapy, or just talking to friends and socializing more. So if people are being kind of sold a lemon with the app, turn into that to promote the mental health, rather than what else they could have otherwise been doing had they not been in that, then you can see those like indirect harmful effects from missing out on other important things. But beyond that, most of what we've spoke about before.
Yeah, so that rating the information from the professionals who are monitoring these systems, and the rules and regulations, perhaps, you know, some government rules and regulations about the development of these programs, and how app stores, or the places where you can download and purchase these programs and these apps, there needs that kind of meeting of minds, and this kind of almost agreement, and how that's managed. Okay. So can you share some practical examples of how your research has been applied in mental health care settings, especially in any non-traditional environments?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is again due to the actual. So this is not to take credit for my research driving that impact. It all comes down to the individual clinicians who've taken it on board and used it to gain momentum. So, for instance, I work very closely with he's a mental health nurse, but also a personal trainer and former like high level rugby player called Matt Waugh, who runs a company called Live More, and that's all about setting up gyms in psychiatric inpatient units. So, when obviously people are detained even against their will, but providing access to exercise on the ward as a positive activity. Now, loads of wards actually do have gyms anyway, so it's almost too obvious, but it's just abandoned or it's used as a storage room and there's nobody to do it. So Live More is more about getting the right people in there, be it the existing staff or external fitness trainers, to run sessions on a regular basis and do the gyms up. They've used the same spaces that were already there for gyms, but got equipment donated from local areas, and that's really effective. Everyone's happy to do that. Like community leisure centres and local gyms will usually give all the stuff, and just really revamp the space and make it more interesting for people. And they've been really successful. They've already got it going through, I think, a dozen wards, and then they're getting more funding to scale it up, across London. And a lot of that has been done in conjunction with our research, and we're doing some research on the initiatives that Matt and his team are providing. So that's a really inspiring example. We've also got, we've got lots of stuff going, really, working with YouTube Health at the moment, which is a new initiative by YouTube to build like an online lifestyle program specifically for mental health, filling that gap that we were talking about earlier, with regards to the lack of authoritative in health information online for people treated with mental illness. So that'll be, all types of lifestyle advice that people can rely on to be actually evidence-based and by people who've researched the backing. So there's lots happening at the minute. There's other lifestyle psychiatry clinics in London and across the world that have been kind enough to let us know how they've been using our research and the types of initiatives they're providing with diet and physical activity to their patients. So there is definitely a movement going. The research does have a trickle-down effect. Our own research, I like to think it's helping people. Just this morning, I've been doing my Zoom workouts with the early intervention services for Greater Manchester, which we're providing at the minute. So that's always a little bit of fun, and you hope that as much as myself and my team are benefiting from delivering those home workout sessions, then the people on the live workout calls who are patients from the services are enjoying that too. So
these are patients who can join these sort of online workouts, and they're led by you and your team of researchers, or
for now it's just a study where any service user from the early intervention service is more than welcome to join our like online live workouts a couple of times a week, and we host 4 a week. We ask people to join 2. It's been very popular so far. And then in future we want to make it something that's more like a staple of mental health care at Greater Manchester and other early intervention services, because it's a way that group exercise or in-person exercise can be provided at scale at very low cost. Just use existing workout videos and everything. It's quite easy. Really. It doesn't require a fitness expert. We just live stream it. A researcher running it and joining in, and it's just a good thing to do. So not everyone has to do it, but for those who want to include fitness in their day-to-day lives, it's a nice option to have available.
Yeah, when that sounds brilliant, and presumably there's not a need for lots of fancy equipment, and people can just sort of join up and get started without any sort of extra tools or equipment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the idea. So any service user from the mental health care services can just join and be at the first session, or they can be a few weeks in. And we try to vary it up. We'll pick a workout that suits the group. So we'll ask people, we've got a home boxercise thing, or we can do some Pilates. And, it's not about, obviously, us all trying to increase our athletic performance as much as let's all do exercise session 20, 30 minutes together to boost our well-being and physical and mental health for the day. We might be pausing again. I can see why it's called the PausCast now, Henry.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to speak to my internet provider and figure something out.
That's fine now.
And do you think there's? I mean, we talked about it's really any exercise, and the more sedentary you are, and the more the less exercise or the more challenges you have with your mental health. No, anything is impactful. Anything is Are there any specific types of exercises? We talked about, a few, whether it's doing stretches, weights, just standing up, running, Pilates or yoga, anything like that. Are there any particular types of exercise that seem to be more effective or not?
Yeah, 100%. And the most effective types of exercise are the types that you'll enjoy when it comes to mental health. You know what I mean? It's all about that, finding ones that you find motivating. Even if you don't enjoy it, if you find the goal of it motivating, if you're doing something, say if you want to get stronger and you're doing strength training exercise, even if you're not at a phase where you're loving every minute, that alignment with your own preferences and goals will ultimately be the biggest driving factor in terms of the psychological benefits, rather than forcing yourself to do something you're not interested in just for the mental health benefits. You still actually will probably confer some psychological benefits even from doing something that you don't enjoy doing, in exercise that's not really aligned with your goals, just because of the physiological side of it. You can still see benefits, but I'm talking for maximum benefits. Think about the types of exercise you've enjoyed in the past, or the types of goals that you have for the future. And if you have somebody to help you come up with a plan or something like that that aligns well with those personal goals and the types of things you enjoy doing, then that'll be the best type of exercise in terms of psychological well-being.
So something that you enjoy doing and something that aligns with your goals. So it doesn't matter whether it's yoga or Pilates or weightlifting or pushing a tractor tire or whatever it is. Yeah. It's just something that you would enjoy.
And then some people like exercising alone, and that shouldn't be dissuaded. I think there's big benefits to doing it as a group in terms of mental health, but then other people might be at a stage in their life where they're anxious or just not interested in that type of thing and prefer to go for a run through the forest or something, and that would be super good as well. So there's no particular setting or particular movement that's particularly beneficial beyond what fits that individual is the best thing.
Brilliant. And are there any misconceptions about the relationship between physical activity and mental health? That in particular, any misconceptions that your researchers perhaps helped to clarify or to?
That's a good question. Any misconceptions? I think everyone's got their own views on it, really. I think the biggest misconception that we come up against when we're doing the research is, oh, that's obvious. Why are you even telling us that exercise is good for mental health? Why are you doing a research project about it and acting as though it's obvious? And I think the general population are correct in that it is very obvious. But then the fact that it's completely absent from most mental health care services points to the need for the research to find how can we actually include it in mental health care. If it's this obvious, all our research is not trying to prove that it works. It's trying to show how can we get it up and running. How can we make this providable? How can we make this engaging for the end users, for the patients, and things like that. So I think the biggest misconception is the lack of need for more investment and involvement in these types of approaches because of how obvious it is. Actually speaks to the need to say, well, if it's obvious, let's do it. Let's make it happen.
It's the old adage that if it's too simple, if it seems easy to do, and as you say, you can go out and go for a run, it doesn't cost you anything, then why do it? Because quite often our minds go, we want something really clever, really technical, really nuanced, or whatever it is that's going to solve our problems. My personal experience, having an extended stay in a psychiatric hospital, there was a gym, but we never did it. We had set classes and lessons and learning and different types of therapy, and there was a gym, but there was no, it took a while to find out that there was a gym, and you had to sign out, and this whole sort of process, probably quite rightly, to get down there. And then there was no one to help sort of train you. You were just sort of left to your own devices. And actually, for me, that was one of the sort of biggest things that helped me. And I really wanted to, go, and I wanted to do it every day. And some days it was closed. And so it was a really kind of, it was the one thing that really helped me. Some of the classes and some of the psychiatrists and the teachers and things were really helpful. But it was that exercise that was really sort of powerful for me.
That's interesting, yeah, and I think there's I hear a lot of stories like that, from various different groups, people trying to provide it and the people on the receiving end of care. And do you think that is partly tied to the misconceptions around potential risks of exercise? Maybe people are scared of getting people, or just uncertainties around it.
Yeah, interesting. And the risk, would you mean giving someone incorrect training and they injure themselves, or?
Well, yeah, I'd like
equipment malfunction.
Really, why do you think that was so underused in that setting? Was it just a disinterest, or were people scared of getting it going? What did you find?
I think it comes back to, how do you build a habit? I feel like it was down in the basement. You had to find the nurse, you had to sign out, you had to, go through the security doors, you had to go down. Sometimes it was closed, sometimes it was open. There wasn't like a sort of very clear, and then you went in, and there was a very nice guy, an American guy who used to be a patient there a long time ago. Maybe he still was, and he just got lost in the basement. But and it just playing really loud music, really nice. But there was just, you were just left to your own devices. There was no set workouts. There was no. Occasionally, we went as a group to the local pool, and you could use the sauna and stuff, and that was kind of fun. But there was just no real kind of focus on it. At the time I went, I had just done a lot of blood testing around sort of what genes were showing up and what was impacting me, and looking at the gut, and because I've been reading a lot about that. And I showed them all this information. I had a COMT slow, which means I have a problem producing dopamine or accessing dopamine, and I struggle to process stress hormones. So that balanced, well, that sort of gave a lot of sort of explanation to the diagnosis of ADHD and bipolar 2, these highs and lows and this sort of dopamine related issues. But they didn't take much notice of it. I had all these results and they didn't take much notice to it. They put me back on pretty strong medications, antipsychotics and mood stabilizers and things like that, which I potentially needed at the time. And they sort of sent you on the way, and you go to your classes, and there was plenty of food as well, but there was no, wasn't targeted nutritional, really, good healthy food that was going to work for you. So I really felt those two parts were missing, and they were just kind of glossed over. Even when you had, okay, this is what blood tests are showing, this is what gut tests are showing, there you go.
That's really interesting. So do you think that would potentially like a lack of almost education or just understanding from the people, you're providing these blood test results, these genetic results, microbiome results that are indicating something, and they perhaps just don't really know what impact that would have on somebody's treatment? Or do you think it was a disinterest, or it's just not part of the standard process, so it goes
I think it was not part of the start. I think they knew, and so I'd worked with an actual a private doctor. I was fortunate enough to work with a private doctor who was also an NHS doctor. So it was, you can get a lot of these things done by, people have done a 3-month course or something, and they send it away, and so it's all a bit worrying. But so I had real results from a real doctor. And I think it was just sort of the process. It wasn't part of their process. It wasn't within their. Luckily it was a well-funded hospital, so they had all the stuff. There was a lot of focus on keeping people safe, which obviously quite rightly, I think they'd had an incident about a year ago, and so they're perhaps in the press, and so it was a lot of focus on keeping people in the right places, safe, making sure you haven't got any, obviously, cables, razors, drugs, even prescription drugs, whatever you had, on you. So I feel like that's what I felt was like the central focus of that hospital, as opposed to the treatment, which was.
Yeah, and that's the way that it's set up, unfortunately, isn't it? Because obviously they are all in big trouble if something happens, and it's best to avoid that. But nobody's in trouble, and no one's responsible if people just aren't exercising, or if people are too sedentary. There's no real monitoring of that, or no real, incentive to change that. Whereas safety is very incentivized in keeping everything just sedentary, feels like safe environment.
Oh yeah, exactly. And if there's a problem, that's when the media and everything, the lawsuits and everything comes on. So you can understand why that might happen. But it was interesting because I talked with my psychiatrist around these kind of things, and he was like, "Oh yeah, great," And they talked about get good sleep, get good exercise, get good diet, avoid alcohol, all these kind of things. And you're like, as you said, yeah, I know that, it's obvious, but then you don't do it because it was obvious, because it also wasn't part of that sort of program.
It's just recommended. It's not provided. There's nothing there for it.
Exactly. I almost wished, and I've had this sort of wish for a long time, that you go to a place for, and also the time you could go to some of these hospitals, depending whether you're in a private or a public, particularly a private place, your insurance only lasts about a month before that's it. And a month sometimes is not enough time to fix some of the problems. So, I always wish you go to a place where they introduce all these lifestyle factors and they make it part of the routine. So when you leave there, you've built a routine that you can continue on and you can carry on, as opposed to just leaving and that's it. And then all the support goes and you're back to whatever life you were back in again.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Okay, well, we've done quite a lot, but I just wanted to ask you, because last time we spoke about, you mentioned something called the dial-in network.
Yes.
And I just wanted to ask you, what's that about? What's the focus of the dial-in network? Can you let us know a little bit?
Yeah, well, the dial-in network is still in its infancy, and we're kind of just figuring out the best way to start, like what membership and stuff will involve. It'll obviously be free and everything, but it's just like a group of individuals who are focused on doing research and new initiatives around what we discussed earlier on using digital tech for physical health, digital physical health tech for mental health stuff, or even, just new applications for physical health stuff. So it's about this idea of taking the advances that are happening in digital tech generally, and especially like with regards to smartphone apps and other wearables and things like that mesh nicely with fitness and even just the online world in general, and how that can be used to promote health and well-being for people with mental illness, or just people looking to improve their mental health generally. So that's like the idea of the network. It's just a special interest. I've got active projects on that field already. I know it's becoming more popular, but there's not that much research going on. So we're just trying to, align interests from anybody, could ultimately be a part of this once we've decided how the membership works, be it from industry or be it from individuals who just have or students or researchers, so clinicians who are interested in using the approaches. So we want to be discussing the types of research that are going on for bringing the advances in digital health in order to improve physical and mental health outcomes, the types of implementation efforts, how we can get it going in clinical services once we have the evidence, just those type of discussions. So yeah, I'll provide more on that later on, I guess, because it was still early days for how it's going.
It's almost like that full circle approach, including all the people we talked about, to bridge that gap.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And dial-in stands for digital interventions, digital innovations and lifestyle interventions network.
Digital innovations and lifestyle interventions network. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Well, we look forward to that. And any other exciting projects on the plan?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the work that I mentioned that we're doing with YouTube, building authoritative health information around lifestyle for mental health. Really excited about this online fitness stuff that we've got going and seeing how that goes. We've had massive success in the past with my interventions, our interventions. We're just doing in-person exercise with people from the mental health services. That's always worked really well. But then the minute the study funding ends, it just starts dissipating because it's so hard to upkeep it with, again, the under-resourced mental health services. But this presents an opportunity where if it does work, it can be scaled, it can be made big, and it won't really cost any more money. And it's so easy for anybody to run it. It just takes one person basically. So I'm quite enthusiastic about seeing how that goes. Or if it doesn't work, what we can learn to make it more accessible and engaging for people in the future. So I've got a lot of interesting projects to keep you guys posted with, and our data as it emerges. Certainly happy to stay in touch about that.
We'll put some links
as well. I'd be interested to talk to you guys if you're interested in discussing more around this field and physical 100%. Health and digital health. So yeah, 100%, it's great work that you're doing, getting this.
Well, we'll put some links and stuff to your work and where people can find some of these resources and other people we talked about in this episode, so people can follow up and get involved and maybe sponsor and help solve some of these problems that we talked about.
That's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the great interview. I very much enjoyed that chat and getting some of your insights onto the topic as well. It's been great.
And so are you going to just after it's about lunchtime now, you're going to go and do those 10 pull-ups or get the bar out? Or
yeah, maybe we'll see.
Perfect.
I might just make some pancakes instead for today, but we'll see.
Oh, okay. I already had pancakes this morning, but
okay, so you're on track.
I'll do 10 push-ups after this is what I'm going to do. So that's my commitment, and I hope everyone else and anyone else listening can take the opportunity to have a wee break and go and do 10 knee-ups, 10 push-ups, or whatever it is.
Absolutely, yeah. Do a little something, guys, after or whilst listening to this. If you've got it in headphones, even that's a good option. We should have said that at the beginning, really, if we knew.
We should have said that. Well, perhaps we can do that again another time, and we could have set breaks where people do it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, we're going to be sweating by the end of this in the future. But yeah, thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate your time. Good luck with everything. As I said, we'll keep in touch, and we'll link all the things we talked about for people to get more access, more information, and participate in some of these great endeavors. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. You too.
Take care, Joe. Thank you. Bye-bye.